Okay, folks, I'm here to share with you all my personal journey through the world of domestic violence. And that's as a victim when I was a child, as an abusive, toxic man when I became an adult. And then I want to share with you guys the healing journey. So I'm going to give you the condensed version of this on here on TikTok. And then if you want more, go ahead and check out my YouTube page because there's going to be more on there. So I grew up in a home where domestic violence was a regular thing. And ironically enough, I watched my mother be an abuser in one relationship and a victim in another relationship. So you could actually say that the behavior was normalized in my childhood. And so it was myself and my siblings, and we saw the toxic relationships, the toxic behaviors all the time. And there are studies that show children that grow up in homes where domestic violence or toxicity is present will oftentimes either become victims or abusers themselves. And in my case, I actually became the abuser. But what I didn't know as a child was that that is where the programming was started. So again, my mother was the one that took care of us. So I watched her relationships, and those relationships were toxic. And I want to say that I love my mother very much. I'm not throwing her under the bus. I just want to give you context for the story. She's no longer with us. And before she left us, she actually healed herself. She did a lot of work in the community trying to heal other people who had issues. So what you see from me today came directly from watching her. So she actually started this. So I want to give her credit for starting this journey in me. So back to the story. Growing up in our home, we saw these toxic behaviors all the time. My biological father was not in the home, but from the stories I heard before I could remember, he was extremely abusive towards my mother. And so this became a norm for all of us. And what we didn't know, what I didn't understand, was this is where the programming started. This is where the conditioning started. And so my first serious relationship, I was 19 years old. And in that relationship, domestic abuse was present. This individual who I was with, and she had very similar toxic behaviors like myself. So in our relationship, we had a mutual violence situation going on. One day she's the victim, next day she's the perpetrator. One day I'm the victim, next day I'm the perpetrator. It just depended. We were a very toxic relationship. So that relationship lasted a couple of years. And then once that relationship ended, I remember thinking to myself, I said, okay, well, I need to move on from this relationship and get with someone else because clearly she was the problem. I wasn't the issue. So I didn't have awareness at the time. You also have to understand that this was actually normal to me. I had never seen a healthy relationship. So the relationship I was in actually just resembled what it was that I grew up in. And so then I met someone else, and then I ended up developing a relationship with this person. We would eventually get married. But before that, my toxicity would introduce domestic violence to this relationship. And you would think that this person would have caught the first thing smoking away from me. But like most victims, she had her own issues and she thought to herself, well, this person just needs to be loved more. If I love him more, if I do this better or do that better, then he will stay and we will have our family. So her and I stayed together. We eventually got married. We had a family, we had kids, we had great jobs. We went to church, praise God. We did all of that. But we had this dark secret, and that dark secret was the fact that domestic violence was in our home. But we became masters at hiding it, which is a normal thing that people in domestic abuse relationships do. The offender is definitely going to hide their behavior, and the victim is also going to hide that behavior. A lot of times, some of the victims don't even know that they're victims. It's such a normalized behavior. And even the offenders, they don't see anything wrong with their behavior because it's normalized to them. So our relationship continued for a little over a decade. And then throughout that time, my wife, she had left a few times. And then every time she would leave, I would go into salesman mode, and then I would tell her whatever she wanted to hear to get her back. And then she came back. Now, throughout this time, I was arrested. I was arrested a couple times for domestic abuse. And I remember going through the process of the court systems and taking the classes, but I went as a hostage. And what I mean by that is I went, like I don't, this doesn't apply to me. I don't need this. I don't have anything wrong with me. And so I went throughout that process, and then eventually I actually started learning some things. But by the time I did that, our relationship was done. Like it had been too much. And so the last time my spouse left, she was gone. She took the kids, she left, and I remember at that time just thinking like, okay, I know why she's leaving. She's leaving because of me, because I'm not a good person. And I started thinking like, how did I get here? What happened to me? And I remember thinking to myself, I had domestic violence in my childhood. I had domestic violence in my first adult relationship, and I have domestic violence in this relationship too. The common denominator is me. And I remember coming to that epiphany and recognizing like, wow, this is my life and I am the creator of all of this chaos that's happening. And I remember thinking at that time, well, if I can create chaos, then surely I can create peace. And so then I just started on this journey of trying to create that peace. I moved away from the city that I was living in. And then I moved back to San Diego, and I said, all right, I need to start a journey of healing. And I said, what do I do? So I started going to counseling. So I had a healing journey of about 3.5 years, and that consisted of me going to individual therapy. I went to group therapy. I went to co-ed therapy, men's only, church counseling, secular counseling. So it was a total of about 3.5 years. And each place that I went to gave me a piece of myself and helped me to understand who I was. I literally went to the University of Me. At this point, I got a PhD in me because I studied me. I studied how I came to be. Why was I a toxic, abusive person? What happened to me? So the shadow work, the self work, the introspection that I did on myself helped me to really understand how I got there. And it also helped me to heal myself. And so then I went on this journey, not to just to heal myself, but to heal the relationship with my ex and my children. And when I say heal, that doesn't mean get back into a relationship. We're not together. That's not what it was for. My healing was never to get her back. My healing was for me to just find out who I was and get me back. But as a byproduct of that, everyone around me benefited from that. It started off rocky between my ex and I because we got divorced, and you know how divorce goes. But throughout that process, I was starting my healing journey. She eventually started her own healing journey. So we were able to come together in a good way to co-parent our kids. And so we have a good relationship right now. Our kids are grown, but I'm proud of the relationship that we do have because statistically, that's not supposed to happen. We've both gone through our healing journey, and our kids have gone through their healing journeys as well. It's not a clean journey. And one thing that I learned is that even though I may have healed, even though my ex may have healed, my children still have to heal as well. They have to go through their layers of life. And so throughout this process of healing myself, it activated healing in everyone else around me. And then from there, I thought I was done. I said, I'm done with this. I don't need to do anything else. I'm just going to leave this alone. But then there was this calling in me, and the calling was saying to me that I need to go speak about this journey. And I thought, that's stupid. Why the hell would I do that? And so this calling just kept bugging me, and I fought it for 2 years. But then eventually, I was like, fine, you know what? I'll go do it. And so I reluctantly called the domestic violence counsel and gave them my story and said, look, this is my story. I know you're not used to hearing this, but I don't know how it's going to help. And I remember the lady on the phone was shocked, but she said, okay, we'll try to get somebody, back to you. And then I was like, okay, fine. I did my job. I reached out, and I'm going about my life. Lo and behold, a couple weeks later, someone calls and says, hey, we want to hear your story. We have an event and we'd like for you to come down and share. And I said, oh, damn, it just got real. And so then I remember going to the event scared. I was shaking. I thought it was going to be a few people, 15, 20. It was 300 people in that room. And I was like, what? This is the first time I'm about to say this to anybody. And I'm sharing this in greater detail than I'm sharing with you all here. And then from that moment, I remember thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing? But lo and behold, I found myself in front of that audience, standing up there, sharing my journey through domestic violence with these people. And like I said, I was giving greater detail at that because I had more time. And I remember my voice was shaking, my hands was shaking. I was so scared. And then I remember looking at the crowd, and I remember seeing their eyes, and everybody was shocked. And it didn't dawn on me that people don't do this. Like, I'm crazy. Something's wrong with me. And so I was closing. I was looking at the door like, I need to make a beeline and get out of here because I don't know what the hell I did this for. And then I said, thank you all. Have a great day. And I made a beeline for the door. And then a line formed in front of the door. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was people that wanted to talk to me. And the first lady in line was this woman. She's probably like 75, 80 years old. And she was crying. And I remember thinking to myself, damn, I knew I shouldn't have done this. That's so stupid. And I'm never doing this again. She grabs my hand and she says, thank you. And I'm like, what? Thank me for what? And she says, my late husband was abusive, and I've never heard anyone accept accountability. And so I took your accountability from me. And that just blew my mind. And from there, at that moment, I recognized this was bigger than me. Since then, I understood the journey, and I understood what I was supposed to do. I knew that I was supposed to be a voice on the other side of it, on the side of healing, the side of change, the side of accountability, the side of growth. And so since that moment, a little over 10 years ago, I've been a violence prevention advocate in many different levels, in many different arenas. I'm a keynote speaker on this topic. I do workshops on domestic violence. I work a lot with the military, primarily the Marine Corps. I've spoken at the Army, Air Force, Navy. I've gone as far as Brisbane, Australia to speak, and also work with those people who cause harm. I work with men and women who are offenders. I work with them to help them understand what's happening and help them to figure out the change process that needs to happen for them to get their behavior together and to move forward with their lives. So at this point, you can say, this is my life, this is my passion, this is what I do. I haven't talked about it much on social media because I do it in my professional life. So social media was a place for me to just share more about healthy relationships. If you notice the content or the material that I put out, I'm talking about being in healthy relationships. And I always encourage people to get the help that they need. I wouldn't be here doing this video had I not gotten help. Had I not gotten the mental health resources that I was able to use to gain a better understanding of myself. This is my regular life. I do this full time, all day, every day, weekends. So, in addition to the other events that I do, I'm also a coach. I do coaching. I coach people who are in these type of relationships, or just coaching in general. My entire life is about benefiting other people and helping them get to the light. This is all a part of my spiritual awakening journey. My spiritual awakening is what actually pushed me to go as far as I've gone in this. And I'm not done yet. When I'm done with this place, I want to be, when you have a towel and you wring it out and there's nothing left, I want to be like that. And so I want to help as many people as I can get to the best place possible. And so I want to send a shout out to all the people out there who are on the front lines trying to address this issue. You got law enforcement, you have victim advocates, you have the therapists, you have the organizations for victims, you have organizations that work with the offenders, you have the court systems, you have the mental health systems that are involved, you have the hospital systems that are involved. All of these entities are involved, and I want to send a shout out to them because it's a thankless job. These are people that are going into very, very dark circumstances to help try to pull people out of that into the light. So I want to acknowledge them because I've had the honor and privilege to work alongside them in these last 10 years that I've been doing this work. And so I can't sit here and say this without acknowledging the work that they've done and the work that they're doing. These are some phenomenal, phenomenal people. So I want to thank you all for staying with me. Thank you for listening to this. I know this is sometimes hard to hear. There are a lot more details to this. If you want to know more, please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel because there's more videos about what I'm doing and what I've done on that platform. Also, if you want to go to my website, it's going to be tagged right here. It's dwaltower.com. And then you can find out more information about myself and what it is that I'm doing. Thank you all for your time. Y'all be well.